Thus forward by 1846, and I've seen original examples, most hats, I reckon most top hats would have been made using the gossamer technique, and there, at least half of them, and perhaps the other half using the older fashion of having a felt hat, whatever felt it is, wool, beaver felt, a mixture, sometimes wool and mixed with a fur felt, whatever, and then either leave it like that or add extra cost, add to some extent extra weight, add a beautiful silk plush material, thin silk plush material, laminated onto it thanks to a varnish, and there would have been a mixture. But there, all the characters are either wearing a direct felt hat, which are probably either some type of fur. It's very hard to tell on the movie, or some type of wool felt. And I think for some of them, like for Bill the Butcher, they have this that plush, that plush fur. Obviously not a silk plush, because it was no longer manufactured by 2002 when they created the costumes. That silk plush laminated, stuck onto the frame, which is really made out of a felt, a dense felt. And how can I tell this is a felt? Well, this precise top hat was for sale, so they have zoom-in pics of it. And for example, the brim is much too dense. So I arrived at that conclusion by the process of elimination, as Sherlock Holmes would say. Knowing that gossamer techniques are only still created mostly just in Great Britain since a long time by the branch known as Henry hats, only by them. Knowing that this movie was made by Hollywood, not very interested in traditional techniques, especially of Britain. Hollywood, but made in Italy. The Italians are very proud, like the French, like to do things their own self, and these costumes were manufactured in Italy. They would most likely not have gone and asked for Henry hats or any British fellow to, oh please, can you make that technique, because we are the only ones left virtually to still make that technique. They would simply have gone. Also, for another reason, gossamer hats are much more fragile. And at that film, as it will show, they will throw all the hats in the air, and obviously they still reuse those hats later on in the movie, so they probably do not want all their hats to be completely broken down to the point that they can't even be repaired and have to make another set of hats. It must have costed enough and taken enough time as it was. So they want more durable hats. And what I mean is this brim is so dense. Obviously it could be gossamer, it could be, usually brims on traditional British and French top hats, which I have a French and a British one, and they were made the exact same way. By the one of them is 1875 in British, and the other one is 1910 and is French, but made in Britain. It says inside the hat. And I know that this brim is 4 layers of gossamer before they added the wool under the brim and the silk plush above the brim. And still it looks dense, but far from as dense as the brim on Bill the Butcher's hat. And again, 2 of them were for sale, and I saw zoomed in pics, HD pics of them, and the brim is very, very dense. It looks typically like a fur felt, probably beaver fur, a felt brim, a very strong, flexible, not very flexible, but to some extent more flexible than if they had added many layers of gossamer and attained that same width, that same density, which would not suffice with 4 layers. Actually, it would be at least 6 layers. Probably 5 to 6, or at least 5 layers. 6 layers would do it. But I adopted to use the gossamer technique, and again, that would have been what you would mostly have seen in that context back then. And so to only see something that you would only have seen 30% of the time is, in a way, an inaccuracy. Now, those hats would have existed, but just it is impossible that all the characters, whichever social class they are, whichever... I think I saw 1 or 2 or 3 ravens later on in the movie that have hats that really seem to be made of gossamer. For that is the thing, when a hat is made out of gossamer, like fur felt, however dense the fur felt is, like beaver fur, which is very dense, still it is a fur felt. It is made out of 1 piece of fur for the crown, 1 piece, a separate piece for the brim, but 1 piece for the crown. And however flat they want it to be on top, it can never be as flat as when it is the gossamer technique. For the gossamer technique, however many layers, whether to use 1 layer for the ton weight, fragile ones, or 6, 1 or 10 layers, what it will do is they would cut a separate piece for the top of the crown, then for the cylindrical shape of the crown, and then they would stick it onto it. And so that is a very easy way of telling when one lands on a historical piece. Is that a fair felt or gossamer? And most of those from back then, which I checked in museums, on photographs from museums, or some of them for sale on eBay back in, now they no longer have them, back some years ago, I could tell most of them were gossamer made, because although they look very different in shape to the ones I have and the ones I'm more interested by later on in the late 19th century, the overall thing is the same. It looks very flat on top, very, very flat, and it has this perfect 90-degree angle with the rest of the crown. But all the hats in the movie, save a few I saw, which were probably made out of gossamer, but all of Bill the Butcher's hats, although in some frames and some positions they may look flat on top, one shall see that they either then bulk up, it either then bunches up a bit, and to keep it flat, what happens, they cannot just keep it flat perfectly. It will last 2 seconds and then it will actually re-enter the crown. And one may see that in some bird's eye view camera shots they had. So clearly these are not with a gossamer frame, these are simply with a felt frame. It is hard to tell for me if they, for Bill the Butcher's hats, if they simply used a beaver fur felt that they managed to make shiny, because it was a long hair felt, or if they used a probably non-shiny beaver and or wool felt frame, that then they added a plush, fur plush of beaver, like beaver fur plush, thin, again that would easily collapse like I said with the handkerchief, but stick it onto the frame. These are all historically accurate techniques. Again, they were not done the historically accurate way, using mercury and all, because these are banned, but the overall result on the movie would look, it looks perfectly historically accurate, only this is not what they would have most worn by then. They would have used a gossamer technique, so to have all the characters only wear those hats and only have 3 characters that are very noticeable in one scene wear a gossamer hat, or i.e. a way more popular hat by the 1860s, because this is in, when the movie is set in 1863, this is in a way inaccurate. This is what I mean to say. Not that the hat itself is historically inaccurate, but more like none of the characters are wearing detachable collars, but by the 1860s most characters would have had a detachable collar and or a shed without a collar, only a band collar meant to take a detachable collar and not solid collars like they all do. So, but then the collars they have solely are accurate. It is only that there are too many of certain things and not enough of others, which makes it inaccurate. But each item I see looks accurate in the movie. I know the sheds, because believe it or not, many of those sheds and all are also sent on eBay for only $50, and I saw that the sheds of the natives are not long enough. But in the movie, also the stitching is clearly a machine-made stitch, because they show zoomed in photographs on eBay. But in the movie, this does not show, the stitching does not show, because one has to actually reverse the shed to see that it is a modern machine stitch, not a 1960s machine stitch. And also the shed is barely long enough, but it does not matter, because in all the scenes, the shirts are tucked into high-waisted trousers like this. So it does not matter. In the movie, it looks very accurate. But the hat's a mistake, because they should have had gossamer-made top hats. 70% of gossamer-made top hats, and only max 30% of older technique wool felt and or fur felt made top hats. But there it was basically 99% of all their top hats were made out using the older technique, which was already outdated since a long time, by 1846. And again, bear in mind, most of the movie is set in 1863, so even more outdated, even more out of context. But then the hat shapes and all are very accurate for 1863, not 46 for most of them, but bear in mind that the shape can't be exactly the same with a gossamer thing, because the technique is so different. So yes and no, it is not that accurate, to be honest. And so now I will really stop playing the movie, because I'm only 6 minutes into it and there's more to go through.
A few crusty bitches and a handful of ragtags.
I know, Bill. You swore this was a battle between warriors, not a bunch of Miss Nancys.